Here we are with part two of what the secret TDA accounts and incarceration have in common. We are going to move forward with some more cases where people have gone directly to jail, not passed go, and have not collected $200 million as what is stated by those that are peddling the secret TDA promissory note, A4V bond, straw man redemption act are making statements about. And our next case is case number 16-CR-0031, United States of America versus Donald Gibson. Now, the background that is on Donald Gibson's conviction is for passing fictitious instruments related to two bonds that Gibson mailed to the IRS in 2012. After the IRS informed Gibson that he owed more than $330,000 in back taxes, Gibson had stopped filing tax returns and paying income tax in 2004, which was the basis of his convictions for tax evasion. Instead of paying his tax bill with cash, check, money order, or credit card, Gibson sent two documents to the IRS, a private offset discharging an indemnity bond and private offset bond. In these bonds, or quote-unquote bonds, Gibson purported to authorize the IRS to pay his back taxes by withdrawing funds from a secret bank account containing millions of dollars that the United States Treasury supposedly held on his behalf. Unfortunately, those did not actually exist, and so therefore he was charged and convicted. The jury convicted Gibson of violating 18 U.S.C. 514A, which penalizes anyone who, with the intent to defraud, pass, utter, present, offers, brokers, or issues any false or fictitious instrument, document, or other item appearing, representing, perpetrating, or contriving through scheme or artifice to be an actual security or other financial instrument issued under the authority of the United States. Now, Gibson did argue this conviction, and he argued it in a way that I think you will all find very interesting. So I'm going to be leaving this link in the description, as with part one. All of the cases that I go over here will be linked in the description so you can view them for yourself. I encourage you to do that because the fact that he labeled these bonds as private bonds, not government bonds, and what his argument, which of course was to no avail because this is considered pseudo legalese that he was using. He argued this in a way that I think you'll all find not only interesting, but reminiscent of a lot of what you're actually hearing when this TDA secret account information is being talked about here on YouTube. Okay, and on our next case, we're going to look to Clay Today, the sovereign citizen that takes a plea deal in a fraud case. This was posted Wednesday, March 29th of 2017, and is written as Green Cove Springs, an Orange Park man who is part of a movement that exposes anti-government tenets to homeland terrorist tactics, has accepted a plea deal over charges that he filed false tax forms in the names of elected officials to make them liable for his debts. Authorities charged 44-year-old Richard Price Tucker with 6 counts of unlawful filing of false documents in early of March 2016. The year-long court case will end on April 19th when 4th Circuit Judge Michael Sherritt sentences Tucker. According to documents, Tucker will serve 10 years in prison for 6 counts of unlawful filing documents or records against real personal property. A convicted felon, Tucker's new sentence will be added to already a 15-year sentence that he faces. Authorities extradited Tucker to Clay County Jail on March 30th, 2016 from the Williamsburg, South Carolina Federal correctional institution after he began filing these documents. Between March 27th of 2015 and July 15th of 2015, Tucker filed multiple Internal Revenue Service forms in a complex fraud scheme such as 1099 OID, 1096, 1099A, and a commercial notice of appointment of fiduciary, creditor, and debtor. Now, many of you have heard of the 1099 OID and the fiduciary, creditor, and debtor. He placed a $100 million monetary value on his life and directed Fourth Circuit Judicial Judge John Skinner, former state's attorney Angela Corey, and legal secretary to accept and receive all liabilities on his behalf and pay all claims and bills associated with his Social Security number. Familiar filings continued long into the investigation and eventually involved some 24 elected and court officials. When Tucker filed fiduciary forms against Corey, she was forced to recuse herself to avoid any appearance of impropriety. On June 22, 2015, Governor Rick Scott signed by executive order naming 7 Judicial Circuit State Attorney R.J. Laraza to prosecute Tucker's case. In a May 2016 interview conducted inside the Clay County Jail, Tucker said he viewed his incarceration as a false imprisonment and likened it to slavery. Now, once again, this will be placed in the description so that you can read the entire document and look up the court case. You will find that the 1099 OID and a lot of the other forms that were filed are forms that have been peddled to everyone on the internet that you are hearing the gurus talk about on a daily basis. If you go through the comment section, you're going to find many people have attempted to try to discredit me using these documents and claiming that they are real documents, when in reality, they are a pseudo-legal document that is mixed with some actual legalese and made to look like they are real, when in reality, they are simply falsified documents. Okay, and on to the next one. Arizona Central is actually a part of USA Today's news network, and they have reported on Gordon Hall, where the headline reads, Gordon Hall trades millions and mansion for a prison cell. Some of you may remember the name Gordon Hall, and that is because Gordon actually owned a very lucrative business that had to do with the Nautilus gyms that were out for quite a while in the 80s. So, unfortunately, Gordon Hall fell prey to the sovereign citizen movement, and as a result is now serving the rest of his, a good portion of his days left in a prison cell. Gordon Hall spent the 1980s playing the part of a larger-than-life Arizona millionaire. The person he most regularly tried to outdo, of course, was himself. The real estate developer and Nautilus Health Club entrepreneur lived on the edge of hyperbole, forever promising the biggest and the best. He was going to plant a 62-story office tower on the Phoenix skyline, which would be the biggest. He bragged about someday becoming a trillionaire, the wealthiest. He lived in a 52,000 square foot mansion, the best. But Hall, now 61, this was as of 2015, will likely spend most, if not all, of his golden years in substantially smaller and far less comfortable accommodations, a federal prison. Hall was sentenced last week to 96 months in prison for orchestrating a $93 million tax scam with roots in the sovereign citizen movement. Now, you don't realize this, folks, because they're not saying it, but everything that these gurus are teaching you with regards to these secret TDA accounts and bonds has to do with the start in the sovereign citizen movement. According to the court records, Hall held seminars at his Mesa home promising people he could make their tax debts disappear by submitting phony money orders to the Internal Revenue Service. Participants in a scheme like this typically range from clueless victims who get bad advice to willing participants who could participants who can be charged criminally, said Brian Watson, spokesman for the IRS Criminal Investigation Division in Phoenix. Watson said anyone who paid Hall hoping to get out of tax debt still owes the IRS. These bogus filings don't relieve someone's tax debt, and the taxpayer could be penalized for sending the document to the IRS. Now, since this time, the IRS investigation squad has put up warnings in their fraud and scam department online and in their offices, making sure that everyone is aware that you get one time to attempt to try to file one of these bogus pieces of paper. And in this case, this time around, it is the promissory note or the indemnity bond. If you file one of these pieces of paper, attempting to try to get them to pay your bills for you through these secret non-existent accounts, they will send you a letter back. And that letter says that you have used up your one opportunity. They're letting you know that these things do not exist. And if you attempt to try to file fraudulent or bogus paperwork with them again, there will be a $5,000 fine penalized for each instant. I have already reported on this. I have already shown you the scam documents that are on the IRS website, letting you know that this is real. This is the case. So please, everyone, before you decide that you are going to attempt to try to draw from a treasury account through the IRS, which there are some that are toting this, you need to be aware that the IRS has had enough of this. From this point forward, you will be investigated. You get one opportunity to make the mistake of sending documentation that is pseudo-legal to them, and in return, they will start adding up $5,000 fines for each subsequent request. Once again, this will be linked in the description. In this case, United States versus Brown. This case was decided back in 2010. As I've told many times before, this has been going on for almost 40 years at this point. So back in 2010, Rogers, Henderson, and Brown were appointed by the court, argued with the cause, and filed the brief for John P. Geddes, Assistant U.S. Attorney, who argued the cause for the appellee. With him on the brief were Roy W. McLeese III and Christellin R. Kolb, Assistant U.S. Attorneys. Edward Brown was convicted by a jury of bank fraud in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1344 and passing fictitious financial instruments in violation of 18 U.S.C. 514 for trying to deposit two fictitious bills of exchange in his account at a federal credit union. Folks, again, promissory notes, bills of exchange, A4V, bonds that don't exist in your real name. All of this, fraud. It is all fraud. It is considered fraud and theft. So we need to be cautious when listening to these gurus, because as you can see over and over again, these cases that are going to be linked in the description for you to view and read for yourself. All these people have gone to jail, and we are not talking about a small amount of time here. Okay, on to part 3.